Well, hello everybody. I'm at home in my green stuff because it's St. Patrick's Day. I hope you have some green on. I really miss all of you. I wish we were in the classroom learning together today. But hopefully you're having some fun times with your family and you're getting to do some of the practice things I sent home with you. I just sent a message on class tag. I assigned all of you some new books on Raz Kids, and I attached this week's Tangy Tuesday. So hopefully you'll get on and do some of those things. But what I really wanted to do today was I wanted to pick up with our read aloud book because it's awesome and we were just getting to the good part. So I'm going to read a chapter and also try to upload this onto class tags so that you guys can hear the next chapter of the story. So before I start, I want you to pause this video and I want you to think what was going on in the story. Where was Kitty? Where was Ricky? What was going on with the family? I think if you take a minute and think, you'll remember that they were in some danger because of the coyotes and the wild dogs. So that's kind of where we're going to pick up right now. It must have been a rock, either that or a stick or a half-buried tree root. Whatever. I remember something hitting the top of my boot right about the ankle. Then I found myself flying through the air. The thick brush snapped as I fell into it. Sharp branches stung against my half-frozen ears, tore at the skin on my cheeks and face. I hit with a bone-jarring thud that rattled my teeth, knocked the breath clean out of me in one big whoosh. A sharp pain bit into my knee, and when I finally stopped tumbling and rolling, another sharp pain was jabbing at my back. The hurtin' must have been what snapped me out of my blind panic. I sat up, gasping to catch my breath. I felt my forehead wrinkle when I rubbed at my right knee. There was a tear in my pants, the damp, warm feel of blood around the tender flesh. With a grunt, I raised up off the rock that was poking me in the back, panted for air, and looked around. For a second, I couldn't remember where I was. It was like that day at the stadium playing football with the guys. Then the terror grabbed hold of me. I sort of blacked out for a second and didn't really remember what had happened. Then I heard Kitty. I don't know how I knew it was him. There were voices from other dogs, growling, snarling, and barking, but when I heard Kitty's voice, I knew it was him. He was still squalling mad with fight, growling and squealing just like he had the day he tore into the cats. Only this time the sound of him was somewhat different, something that told he was in a fight for the death, not a fight for food or for fun, a fight for his very life. My legs held me when I stood. The right knee hurt something terrible, but even limping bad, it didn't slow me much. I had a stick in my hand, a big, heavy stick. I don't remember hunting for it, don't even remember picking it up. It was just there. I reckon I could have been thinking a lot of things, thinking about how I'd raised Kitty from a pup, how I'd kept him from starving to death, remembering all the times we'd played together or chased around the countryside with Beauty. I could have been thinking that Kitty was trying to save our cow and her calf, and I should have been there helping him instead of running off scared. Only I didn't think any of those things, not until after it was all over. It was like my head was empty. I wasn't thinking anything at all. I was running back up the path, limping on my hurt knee and hanging on to the club in my hand for dear life. Kitty's cry came to my ears again. At that moment his voice was the only thing in the world, nothing else. No thoughts, no panic or fear of dogs, no feeling of the darkness closing in around me, just his voice, his hurt, desperate voice, growing weaker by the second. A limping run broke me from the brushy path and into the clearing by the pond. Across from me I could see the dogs. 3 of the 5 had jumped Kitty. I could see him struggling right square in the middle of them, snarling and flinging himself, almost helpless as they dragged him to the ground. The big German shepherd that had stared at me had hold of Kitty's leg. He stretched it out from him, pulled him off balance just enough so the other 2 could knock him down. One of the others had Kitty by one ear, but Kitty had him by the throat, hanging to him even while the other 2 dogs were ripping him apart, hanging to him with a death grip. The third dog had Kitty by the back. Even in the half-darkness of the little valley, I could see the blood shooting from beneath his fierce jaws. The sight of those dogs trying to tear Kitty to shreds sent a fire boiling through me. My teeth clamped together so hard I could feel the grinding clean to the top of my head. I raised the club with both hands. Kitty cried out in pain. Even with his jaws clamped tight around the dog's throat, I could hear his whimpering voice telling the whole world he'd lost his battle. I brought the club down with every ounce of strength in my body. It whistled through the crisp winter air, found its mark, square in the center of the German shepherd's back. He let out a startled yelp. I felt something crack. Then his legs flew out from under him. He fell to the ground with his mouth opening and closing. His legs churned every which way, but he couldn't get up. I knew I'd broken his back. The dog that had been biting Kitty's back had moved around in front of him. He had him by the soft part of the belly. I could see by his jaws the place where he'd torn a wide gap in Kitty's stomach. He saw me too. Just as I raised the club, he let go of Kitty and turned to run. I brought the club down fast, aimed blind, and swung hard. The blow caught him. It was a glancing blow. It struck against the side of his head. Then the end of my club broke as it slammed against the ground. The dog yelped with pain. He staggered sideways, then fell to the ground. After wallowing around for a second, he was on his feet, yelping and pitching as he staggered in circles. I knew I'd only dazed him, so I raised what was left of my club and started for him again. I was so busy thinking about knocking those dogs off Kitty, I forgot about the two who were watching from the edge of the battle. All at once, something hit the back of my leg. I felt a sharp, searing pain, yelled out, screamed as long white fangs tore through my flesh and into muscle. I felt myself falling. I screamed again. Suddenly, Kitty came to life. For a time there, I thought he was almost dead. His stomach was torn open and there were bleeding cuts all over his back and shoulders. He was so weak that he could just barely hold to that other dog's throat. But just as I hit the ground, I saw him let go of his death grip and charge toward me. His attack knocked the dog from my leg. I felt the flesh tear between his teeth, heard the ripping sound of my pant leg shredding away. Kitty roared and snarled with more fury and anger than I ever heard. He was like the swirling wind from a bad storm. His rage knocked the dog loose from me and sent them both spinning toward the center of the dry pond. I lay there watching Kitty take the dog away from me. Then my startled mind cleared enough to remember that there were still 2 more dogs. Trembling, I staggered to my feet. Any second I expected another dog to come tearing into me, expected to feel the pain of fierce teeth. They weren't there. The other dog that had been watching the fight and the one I'd hit with the glancing blow against the side of the head were gone. Scared and shaking, I looked all around for them. Far up the hill, I could hear them moving through the brush at a fast run. The German shepherd I'd hit lay still and lifeless on the ground. The dog Kitty had by the throat was staggering around a few feet from me. His head hung low, and I could hear the bubbling sound when he tried to breathe. I stared into the darkness at him. Blood dripped from his mouth. In his throat, where Kitty's jaws had been, blood and air bubbled out from deep holes. He staggered some, fell. His throat rattled for breath as he died. All at once, the chills shot up my back. I didn't know what it was at first. Then I noticed the quiet. Only a second ago, Kitty's battle had been raging behind me. Now there was nothing there but quiet. I wheeled around. Kitty was lying on his back. The other dog stood over him. His teeth were buried in Kitty's neck. "No!" I screamed. I raced toward them, planted one foot just as I got there, and kicked with the other. The dog yelped. I felt the toe of my boot dig deep into his ribs. He let go of Kitty's throat and took off running. A few feet away, he stopped. I grabbed up a stick and took after him. Tail tucked, he lit out for good. I guess he had been so busy fighting he forgot all about the cow and calf he and the other dogs in the pack had come after in the first place, because when he turned to run, he went straight up the draw where the heifer and her baby were. It was so dark in that draw, I never did see what happened. A few minutes after the dog ran in there, though, I heard the old cow bellow. Then I heard the dog yelp and a whole bunch of brush snapping and crashing around. I knew the old heifer took care of him, but good. The battle was over. I turned on shaking legs and went back to where I'd left my dog, lying in the bottom of the dry pond bed. I knew he'd be dead when I got there. Dead, or so far gone I couldn't help him. But I had to know for sure. The tears rolled down my cheeks. I wiped them with my coat sleeve and knelt beside my dog. He whimpered when I touched him. "You're going to be all right, boy," I said. Only, I knew I was lying. I knew he was going to die. Then my mouth fell so wide open it nearly touched the ground. Somehow, Kitty was on his feet. He was wagging that long floppy tail, bouncing around and lopping me in the face with his sloppy wet tongue. I didn't push him away like I usually did. I just let him lick me. I held him in my arms and cried, laughed and cried till I could hardly catch my breath. "You're going to be all right, boy," I said again. This time, I wasn't lying to him. That thick hide of his had saved him from the dog's neck hold. I calmed him some, held him out at arm's length to have a good look at him. There were cuts all over his back and shoulders. One ear was bit clean off. Nothing left but a short bloody stub. The tear in his stomach was the worst, but none of his insides had spilled out, and I knew that if I could get to the house where Mama could take care of him, he'd be good as new in no time. "All I got to do is get you home," I said. Then I repeated the words like they were far off and frightening. "All I got to do is get you home." But how? Home was 2 miles away. 2 miles of hard walking. I was afraid to let Kitty walk because he might tear that stomach wound open and really hurt himself. I wasn't in much shape to carry him either. One leg was pretty well torn up, first from busting my knee open when I fell on that sharp rock, and second from having the back of it chewed by the dog. While Kitty and me were fighting for our lives, I hadn't noticed it. Now that everything was over and I'd sat down to rest, I could feel the pain. It was an aching, throbbing pain, hurting bad enough to bring the tears to my eyes. The little valley where our dry pond sat was dark now. There was a gray glow in the sky, the sun had set beyond the horizon, and the light from the edges of high clouds was all we had. It wasn't enough to see by. I sat down beside Kitty. He crawled up against me and whined. When I petted him, he licked my hand. That's when it started coming to me, all the things that had happened, all the things that could have happened. It gave me the shakes all over. I felt sick to my stomach, too. Kitty nuzzled up against me, looked at me like he was trying to take care of me, and all along he was the one needing care. That made me cry even more. I felt so helpless. I was hurt, and the cold was moving into me, coming with the night to chill my already aching body. Thoughts and visions of the bad things that could have happened to me and Kitty kept coming to my mind. Worst of all, my pup needed help, and there was no way I could get it for him. That's when I heard the horn honking. The sound came from the pickup down in the muddy field. I threw my head back and started yelling. Mama was there, probably worried sick about me and trying to find me. I hollered louder, kept hollering until I saw the flashlight bobbing and flickering up the path toward the pond. The flashlight was the prettiest sight I ever saw. So I want you to think about Kitty and Ricky and how brave he was, how they both were. And I want you to make a prediction what you might think will happen in the next chapter. And I'll try to get that recorded and sent out to you sometime this week. I miss you guys. Bye-bye.